Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Hello, Ciara.
Hey, Kevin. How's it going?
It's going. How are you going?
I'm good. Sorry, I just put a wad of gum in my mouth.
Gross.
So that's really nice for our
Gross.
listeners.
That's gross.
Don't you have some too?
Yeah. Yeah. Mine isn't fresh though. I mean, and I just want to point out it wasn't a wad when you put it in there. It's a wad now. It's because I mean, otherwise it's like you found some chewed gum and you're like, oh, I'll just put that in my mouth and chew it. I mean,
fair enough.
I guess you don't want to waste. Waste not, want not. Maybe we should all chew chewed gum.
I used to do that in high school just to freak people out.
You seem like the type that would have done that.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of gross shit.
Yeah.
Not anymore though. Nothing I do is ever gross.
I used to eat paper.
Well, look who it is.
To freak people out, which isn't gross.
Paper?
It's just
Oh,
weird.
please.
Yeah, like napkins or like homework. I would eat my homework. I was also a dog, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Sorry, teacher. Kevin ate my homework.
For those of you on audio only, we have a feline visitor. Kimiko is here on the cam. Cat talk.
I feel like she's been extra needy.
Yeah.
Kimiko here is a very affectionate cat. I've had cats my whole life, and I've never met a cat more affectionate and needing of attention than she is.
Same.
But I feel like she has been particularly... She's licking my shoulder right now. I'm wearing a hoodie.
Just licking your hoodie.
I think she likes it when we sit on desks, so she feels more at eye level with us.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been eating human food now for a few months for the first time in her life.
Yeah, that's another thing. This cat is 13, 14 years old. Used to never care about anything except her kibble. Like not even tuna or any kind of typical human food that cats go crazy over. Did not care. And now every time I have a slice of pie, she's all over me.
Yeah, she likes cheese residue also. If I have pizza or something, she'll just come and lick the plate.
Yeah.
It's sad.
If anyone wants to follow my cat on Instagram, it's Kimiko_loves Kimiko. Wait, sorry. Kimiko loves Kimiko.
Does love Kimiko.
It's Kimiko loves you with underscores between the words.
Yeah, you just piece it all together from that little puzzle she just presented you. You'll know. You'll recognize this. She's a big black and white fur ball with no tail.
She's embarrassed that we're talking about her, and she ran off.
Walked away. Well, I think she's not embarrassed. I think she got an agent recently, and her agent has told her never do free screen time.
Oh.
And so when she realized we were recording, this wasn't just like a dry run. She's like, I'm out of here. My agent's going to want his cut. I don't know what money is. Because I'm a cat.
Aww.
Yeah, she's dumb.
She's savvy, though.
She's dumb. Yeah.
Business savvy.
Yeah. Well, she knows to listen to her agent, and that's rule number 1 of showbiz. Always listen to your agent.
Wow. I don't know why anyone listens to our podcast.
No, I don't think anybody does. If anybody out there is listening,
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Sorry. Moving on. What is today is November 22nd, 2020. Mm-hmm. Lots of twos.
Yes.
And it's a weird time. It's a weird time. For those of you listening from the future, every time I say that, I imagine like Star Trek people who are like pulling up ship's database and like, oh, what is this audio
standard
file?
deviation.
300 years from now in a starship, they're like, what are these people talking about? Anyway, it's not. I mean, that'd be cool. But
yeah.
Also for those of you just listening in a week or whatever, that this is when we're doing this. There's a lockdown going on, a bit of a pandemic. There was an election recently, I guess, depending on who you ask.
There's definitely an election.
Well, I mean,
I think that's one thing we can agree on as an election happened.
Okay. Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
I mean,
can we come together
you
and
and I can agree on that. Yeah, but there's people out there who no.
They think it's a hoax.
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people apparently who think that the election was a big
rigged.
Fraud.
Sure.
It was rigged, yeah.
But I don't think people disagree that an election happened.
Well, I mean, is it an election if it's rigged?
Sure.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it? It's called the Socratic method, babe. Look it up.
Well,
it's not. That's not the Socratic method. Anyway, yeah. So there's people, mostly on the right, I think you could say, who are under the impression that the election was it was rigged.
There's some
stolen.
voter fraud.
Right, and that Trump won would have won. He in fact lost to Joe Biden.
So any election, there's going to be some degree of voter fraud, you know. But do you think there was enough in this case to warrant a?
I don't. And here's the thing. I will admit right now that I have not seriously looked into the allegations. In the first day or two, I would follow up on individual threads with accusations, and they were all just immediately debunked. So I kind of stopped paying attention, which was kind of my suspicion anyway. I mean, people who know Trump, we've been talking about this for years about how if he gets defeated in his re-election campaign, he's going to claim it's a fraud and he's going to refuse to leave office.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what he's doing. And from what I understand, there's no good evidence, and all of the cases that are being brought in court are just being dismissed one after the other, and that the judges are increasingly treating them as nuisance cases, and it looks to be just a big embarrassment. The Republican leadership is not behind Trump on this. A couple of them are kind of, more or less on board, but I mean, we're talking like Giuliani, I think, is one of the only Republican politicians who's like actively supporting this nonsense idea of a rigged election. Mm-hmm. And I mean, look, I would be open to legitimate evidence, but the fact that there's the cases are being thrown out of court, and the only people who seem to be talking about it are like Trump's employees and his legal team, you know, it makes it hard to believe that there was, in fact, a rigged election. It seems like other Republican, supporters, sure, some of his supporters, and as we all know, some of his supporters would believe literally anything he said. Yeah, and, so it doesn't mean much.
Well, people on Twitter
right.
too.
Yeah,
come on.
people on Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, I haven't looked into this at all because I voted for Biden and I don't care. No, honestly, if there was, some significant voter fraud, then that absolutely should be looked into. But
sure.
I'm being honest as a biased human being that I haven't bothered to look into it because I don't want him to be president. So
yeah, I haven't bothered to look into it because for me, politics is awfully craven and it seems worse and worse all the time. But if the fact that other Republican politicians are not blowing this horn, or are in very, very small numbers, that says a lot to me. If this was a legitimate case of a stolen election, every last one of them across the board would be out, raging about it. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, they're just saying, no, Trump is making an embarrassment of himself and the party, and he needs to shut up and cede the office.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much an endorsement of the results, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, my vague understanding of this is for a minute there, it looked like Trump had a pretty good lead. They were counting votes, and it took a few days, and it looked like Trump had the lead. And then all of a sudden, it looked like Biden just swooped in, and apparently that looks suspicious. But it's not, because a lot of states were counting the mail-in votings last, and Trump specifically said, don't mail in your ballot. So It makes sense that the people that did were likely Biden voters. So all that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Although I still don't really, they should just, I don't know why they wouldn't count mail-in votes as they come in.
Yeah, I haven't looked into why they do that, why they wait until Election Day.
Or even at or the last thing. It's like,
yeah, I think most of them started. I think they were legally required for some reason to start counting the mail-in votes on Election Day, not before, even though they had them for weeks sometimes.
Yeah, it's weird. Why not just, have them, just start.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. But, what you're saying, it makes sense. And there's even Republican lawmakers who are saying the same thing, Republican politicians who are like, look, yeah, at first glance, it might look kind of weird that all the later votes that were being tallied went to Biden, but it's because Trump was going out of his way to tell everybody not to do mail-in voting, so his supporters didn't.
Right.
And so all the votes that were counted after Election Day, not all of them, but most of them went to Biden, because those of us who in the Biden camp, we mailed in ballots partly because it's convenient and modern, but also because there's this whole pandemic that some of us care about,
Yeah.
Another thing that Trump's camp doesn't really tend to go in for.
Sorry, our cat is ready for her close-up.
Yeah.
Do not rub your face against it.
Stop it.
Sorry to everyone listening. Kimiko is rubbing her face against my camera.
What a cutie.
What was I about to say
Did you
about
talk
that?
to your agent?
Did you work out a deal? She wants a cut of our patron money.
She already gets it. We feed her.
That's true. This election was the first year that I realized that mail-in voting wasn't an option everywhere. Because here in Oregon, it's not only an option, it's the only way we vote. That was another thing I learned.
Really?
You can't actually go anywhere to vote here in Oregon. You have to mail it in.
Wow, I had no idea.
And it's so stupid. It's one of those things that now that I know that, I realized how I didn't really think about it that deeply, because there's a thought in my head that I never really explored, which was why do people go in to vote? Just mail it. It's so much easier. And then with Trump talking about how there's going to be fraud and telling his people not to do it that way, I was like, it's not an option. I see.
I remember even it was a year ago or something. He created this this voter fraud commission to investigate past cases of voter fraud, and they couldn't find any, and they just disbanded the whole commission. It's just we give up. And that was his own people that he put in this committee, and because they're of course there's going to be a couple scattered cases of fraud,
sure,
but they just didn't find anything that could sway an election, not even close.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's such a big clusterfuck.
It really is.
Speaking of variations in how people vote by state, the last time I voted, I lived in Florida, and the fucking ballot was so confusing. I remember I was talking to you about how confusing the ballots are, and you were just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's when I realized that they vary by state. State, there's no standard. I was just thinking for a national election, there'd be a national ballot or something, but I guess not. And then you reminded me of the whole swinging Chad issue in Florida in the 2000 election. Remember, Florida had all the fucked up ballots.
Yeah, it was Gore versus Bush.
Yeah.
And I don't explain to me what the Chad thing is, but what I remember is Florida had to recount their votes because they would have they would have Gore's name and a little some bubble you'd fill in, and then Bush's name in a bubble, and they had arrows to the bubbles, but they also had a line, and a lot of people were following the line when they should have followed the arrow, and that's why there were so many wrong votes. That's what I remember.
That sounds like the one that I filled out in 2016 for the presidential election. But what I remember from the 2000 election was that it was a punch hole, and if you didn't punch all the way through, then the Chad, which is the little piece of paper that falls out, would stay attached, and then it's a swinging Chad.
And
then that created a bunch of controversy, because how do you count those, and is it a vote or not a vote, and
right.
But yeah, when I voted in 2016, it was very strange. It was the candidates' names were on opposite. It was they were staggered on opposite sides of one column. So you'd have Hillary's name over here, and then Trump's name over here a little bit lower, and then somebody else's name down a little bit lower on the left. And you were supposed to draw a line all the way across. But when you did, it's nothing looks certain after that. You can't really tell if you're doing it right. You're just kind of taking a guess, sort of. And I remember just thinking that's so strange that the most important paperwork you can fill out is the most difficult and confusing. And it shouldn't be. Why is it so hard? Why not just a little bubble like I did here?
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you think of the Oregon ballot?
Yeah, it was easy as hell. It was
fine.
Totally straightforward. It's exactly what I would have imagined.
Because we have so many graphic designers here.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Yeah, because it was just like any test I've taken thousands of in high school or college. It's a multiple choice question. You just fill in the bubble for your answer.
Yeah.
It's very simple. But no, Florida has to have this staggered, weird geometric nightmare with lines and columns.
Do you think it's intentional or just incompetence?
Probably just incompetence. Because, the only thing I can imagine is that, if it were intentional, then it's a conspiracy to only let people with high nonverbal intelligence vote. People who can fit together spatial puzzles, right? And that would be a pretty strange conspiracy.
Well, that's kind of like an IQ test.
Yeah, in a way, but it would be skewed, first of all, towards nonverbal intelligence, specifically spatial analysis stuff. So, maybe if the mechanics have a really strong lobby, mechanics are we should have a vote.
Yeah, and I guess it's not a really good strategy, because if you're just like making it difficult for people to know how to vote, that doesn't mean they're going to vote for your candidate.
Right. Unless you somehow also, God, there probably are IQ differences between the left and right in terms of votership. I wonder if anybody's done that research. That sounds like a source of potential drama.
Yeah.
I don't think we should do that research. We
Nah.
shouldn't. But the left would win. See, now you don't have to
do the research. Let's just draw conclusions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being condescending is kind of our way.
Yeah, that's
over
true.
Here on the left. I guess I'm still on the left. I mean, a lot of other people I know on the left are unsure whether I'm still on the left, because I'm much more centrist than I used to be.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's just because the landscape changed. I don't feel like I've moved very much.
Yeah, I don't
kind of stayed where I was.
I don't know if I moved, because I don't think I really paid attention to politics the way I do now. So I don't think, I always just kind of took for granted, like, yeah, I'm a liberal because that's how everyone is around me, and
right.
those were the good people. So.
Yeah.
And now the more I learn, it's like, yeah, I'm a liberal, but the right makes sense in certain points too. And
the left is crazy a lot.
Yeah, there's crazy on both sides of the extremes for sure. And I don't know, life is more complicated, nuanced, and blah blah blah. But I'm still left leaning. Yeah,
me too. I think the only way I actually did move more to the right is just by finally sort of acknowledging and accepting that there is value on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was kind of an abstraction, I'd be like, yeah, I guess maybe there's something to contribute from the other side. Maybe they're not all stupid racists, whatever.
Right.
But that was a pretty immature standpoint. And once I actually took the time to try to understand what conservative philosophy is about, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty to offer.
Yeah.
On that side, but they're still wrong.
About everything.
About
all the time.
Yeah. Oh man. But anyway, yeah, so we got this whole pandemic thing. We got this lockdown going on.
Right.
Got a new lockdown because the cases are skyrocketing.
Yeah, so Kate Brown, our governor, just recently announced that she wanted to do a 2-week freeze, is what we're calling it.
Sure.
So restaurants are closing again, bars, gyms, that sort of thing. They're asking, people to not gather more than 6, I think, between 2 households. Churches are fine up to 25 inside and 50 outside, I think is the one kind of okay. And then she, a couple days after she said that, here in our county, she stretched it because we're in a denser part of Oregon, Portland. She extended it to 4 weeks, so now it's 4 weeks, just in time for my trip to Hawaii, which all of a sudden I am hesitant to talk about because I feel like the shaming is like kind of coming back again. I'm hearing a lot of this, like, if you're traveling right now, you're a fucking asshole. Piece of shit loser. So there you go. Piece of shit loser and a fucking asshole. I actually got, well, first of all, I'll preface this by saying that I'm going to Hawaii, where it's mandatory to get tested to get into the state. So I got tested a couple days ago, just got the results. I'm negative. Masks, of course. I'm gonna wear a mask, and then I even got a bucket hat with a zippable face shield.
Nice.
I'm gonna look like a massive dork.
I saw that in the other room. I thought you were maybe keeping bees now or something.
No.
It looks like a beekeeper's helmet.
It looks pretty stupid. But
it looks pretty safe, Ciara. It looks pretty responsible. Oh, that's how it looks.
That's what I'm doing. And then I'm meeting some friends, and they're all getting tested, and we're just going to hang out with each other and then hang out, do outdoor stuff, like hang out on the beach and go hiking. We're not, gathering anywhere except with each other. So I don't know. I know it would be better if I just stayed at home. But I've been at home for 9 months, and I'm going a little crazy, and I miss my friends, and there you go. I'm a piece of shit. Yeah.
You know what bothers me about this? You were talking about the orders from Kate Brown and the guidelines or whatever. And they're self-contradictory. Because, like she talked about the gatherings of, 6 people from no more than 2 households. Mm-hmm. The actual guideline was no don't have company, no social engagements. But if you do, then have no more than 6 people from no more than 2 households. And that's the kind of thing, like, I understand why they may have done that, because they know people aren't going to listen to them. Mm-hmm. So then they're like saying, but if you're going to break the rules, then here's the way that you break them, But then it's like, well, how do you know people aren't breaking that rule? Especially when you set the precedent that you just gave them a rule and in the same breath told them exactly how to break it and how it's acceptable. So, I mean, the logical extension from there is that what you're saying doesn't matter, or doesn't matter much.
Well, the way I saw it was saying something like no social gatherings, no social or cancel social activities. I think that was just kind of the broad, like, do this, and then if you want to get in the specifics, like, this is the specifics. This is what they're considering, like, a social gathering. Like,
yeah, but it was the part about 6 people from 2 households. In that, it was a 2-sentence section that said, don't have gatherings from people outside your household. Just stick to your own household. But if you do, then make it no more than 2 households and no more than 6 people. So that's the part that bothers me, because people are going to pay attention to the part that's convenient to them, or they're just going to disregard the whole thing because they're negating their own advice in the same paragraph. I
don't really see it as negating.
I mean, they're saying it's not okay to have people from outside your household, and also it is, as long as it's only one other household. So one of those is false.
No, I didn't say you can't have people from outside your household. It said no social activities.
It did. It said only stick to your own household, but if you aren't going to stick to your own household, stick to 2 households.
Oh, I didn't read that.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is you have to dig through, too. I had to find the transcript from her press conference to get this, because I tried watching the press conference. It was like an hour long on YouTube. It was horrible and mind-numbing. Then I found a bunch of articles about the press conference. I found state-issued guidelines that used language from the press conference that kind of cobbled together policy papers based on what she said verbally during the press conference. Then I found the newspaper articles that really, like, they would attach to this point or this point. A lot of them were really focused on blaming people for the spread. So, you got that language in there. But the gist of it was basically, she was saying, here's what we want you to do, and if you're not going to do that, here's another way you could go, But none of it gave me the impression that they were serious about it, other than the repeated statements that, we're serious about this. Stick to your own household. But also, it's okay to have 2 households if you're going to break the rules. But the fact that you read it differently is kind of my point, I want to trust the government's advice. I want to know that when I'm getting guidelines, they're clear and they make sense and they don't contradict themselves. But anyway.
Well, you don't leave the house anyways, so.
Yeah, we do have company occasionally.
We have one person that comes over.
Occasionally. Well, we've had people come and go for various reasons, not all socially. In fact, none of them socially. Right? Except, in the last 2 weeks, probably 8.
What?
We've had people come to consult on housework.
Oh,
We've had production crews come for days and days in a row on end and habitate half the house.
Days and days. It was 3 days.
Days.
Days and days.
And days, yes.
Day.
3 days. Maybe days and day.
Yeah, fair enough.
So the point is just that it's hard to gauge what exactly is the right approach.
Right. I think we've been on the safer end compared to most people, especially because we both work from home too, so we don't have a job that we're going to every day. Not that there's anything wrong with going to your job, obviously, but I mean, just in terms of interacting with people, it's been pretty damn low for us.
Yeah.
Although you're right, the production crew was an exceptional circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the downfall of civilization,
mm-hmm.
it's going to be traced back to that production crew. I can feel it.
Probably.
So, anyway, what else we got? Enough of this pandemic news.
Oh, no. Actually, I wanted you to know, well, do you think, are you worried about me going to Hawaii?
I mean, more than if you were to not go.
Well, yeah, sure.
But beyond that, I don't know.
You don't think that's that big a deal?
I mean,
that's
the whole problem with this whole pandemic. Well,
I feel like you've relaxed a lot since the beginning of it.
It's not so much that I've relaxed; it's that I probably around June or so is when I started to realize something's got to give, because the information that was coming even then was all over the board. There's no end in sight. There's no clear indication of I mean, the guidelines would change in any given day several times about how the disease is transmitted, what you should do to protect yourself and other people.
And to be fair, a lot of that's just because we didn't know.
Yeah, we still don't know very much.
We're still learning about it.
So I mean, you have to. Most people have to decide to live to some degree, to do some amount of normal stuff, because this isn't going away anytime soon. Mm-hmm. And it should only be so disruptive,
right. I mean, suicides are up.
Yeah, suicides
mental health
are up.
is suffering. I mean,
Sure.
it's like it's affecting me quite a bit, and like I'm a pretty like well-adjusted, fine person. I don't have any mental health issues or anything like that. So I can't imagine people who already are dealing with like depression, anxiety, or even worse. Like that's what kind of bugs me is like I was having this conversation where one of my friends was talking about how there was a curfew in her state, and she thought it was ridiculous because they weren't allowing people to like go for a walk by themselves or drive a car. And one of my other friends was like, well, don't you see how they were just trying to protect people? And it's like, no, like it's obvious how people staying in their home helps. It helps reduce the spread of COVID. That's pretty clear. But it's not so clear what the negative consequences are for that, and there are. It's people's mental health. It's these suicides that are happening. And so you do got to balance that. And it's tricky because it's not really clear how to, make those negative consequences, like alleviate them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not just those. I mean, there's other negative consequences, the whole economy. Right.
Yeah.
There's that.
People's livelihoods. Right.
The wildfires we had, a couple months ago were almost certainly a direct result of at least reduced staffing, let alone all the other disruptions to the forestry system. I mean, there's cutting staff at any major scale, whether that staff is infrastructure, government workers, private employees, or anything else. I mean, you're disrupting the fabric of society, and it has big repercussions, and those amplify, especially when you have interoperable complex systems like we have. And the repercussions are I think it's fair to say, it's almost fair to say literally unimaginable. But I can say the worst thing that could happen is the end of humankind, right? Maybe some would say the worst thing would be like the end of animals, people who the misanthropic types. But I mean, we could say, for instance, nuclear war would be a negative outcome of a societal disruption. And
what bugs me is just people that say like, "Oh, this is simple, you guys. Don't you care about grandma?" Like all this, and it's like, look, you make the case that it's a sacrifice worth making, but don't act like it's not a sacrifice worth making.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those
it isn't really hard for people, and people's lives aren't being destroyed by this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of those people also aren't like I feel like a lot of introverts might need to get off their high horse, and recognize that there are certain. It's convenient to be an introvert in a time like this, but people can't force themselves to adopt an introverted disposition. If there are extroverts who need to get out and socialize to be mentally stable, then they're severely disadvantaged right now. Right. And
be wary of like that example I gave of like, this, and I doubt they're like seriously cops are out here enforcing this necessarily, but like if your local government is saying you can't even take a walk or drive a car by yourself, and your response to that is like, well, we're just trying to keep people safe. Like, no, that is a no risk activity. Like,
it's low risk
to drive a car by yourself.
Yeah, because when you compound it at scale, then if you let everybody drive a car by themselves or walk by themselves, some number of those people are also going to stop and get out and go in somewhere or talk to somebody or something.
But the point I'm trying to get is that, and maybe this is like a little paranoid, but I don't trust our government to necessarily like ethically enforce restrictions on us and give it back to us like when you know the pandemic is, you know, I mean, it's we're like 20 years away from any kind of 9/11 type terrorist attack fear, but we still have the Patriot Act and invasive TSA and spying and stuff like that.
Yeah. On the other hand, part of the reason that we're 20 years away from a 9/11 type attack is because of the invasions to our privacy and rights.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and again, you can make the case that it's worth it, but, you know, at least acknowledge that there are consequences to this, and they're not great. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I think in the beginning it was easy for people to say, look, quit being an asshole, stop traveling. You know, when it's like 2 or 3 weeks in, you know, it's like, come on, everybody, let's pull together and huddle and, you know, stay indoors and whatever. But then even after like a month, 2 months, people are starting to go crazy. Mm-hmm. And now we're fucking, 10 months in?
Right.
So at this point, I can't really blame people for trying to reintegrate into society and get out there and do stuff, as long as they're being basically safe, you know? And I'll admit that I'm not qualified. I don't think many people in the world are qualified to say what on an individual level is basically safe. But, you know, if you're asymptomatic and you're not like directly rubbing shoulders with strangers every day and you're carrying, at least have a mask with you in case you happen to be around people, you can put it on. I get it, you know, like we gotta live. We gotta make this a society again before it's gone, before it's past the point of equilibrium.
Right, because I mean the idea was to flatten the curve so we wouldn't overwhelm our hospitals, and you know it's been, you know, almost 3/4 of a year of doing that, and the idea of staying inside isn't going to make the virus go away. Only a potential vaccine will, and that's a long ways away, even if we discover one today. Like, it's, you know, you still have to deal with distribution and anti-vaxxers and all that. So it's, I mean, we got to find some kind of balance, I suppose.
Yeah.
Fuck the anti-maskers though, man. Like, that's...
Yeah, I don't see any call for being anti-mask.
That's stupid.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I think about the most, really the only way this even remotely has a direct personal impact on me, is that I do periodically have strong desires to practice jiu-jitsu. And, you know, since I started 10 years ago, I've never been consistent. So it's not like my whole life is disrupted now that I can't do jiu-jitsu. I mean, I haven't done it in 3 years anyway. But times like this is when I really want to, you know, because it's such a stabilizing influence. It's so good for health and mental health, and it's fun, and it's an empowering hobby. But it's also very, very close, intimate contact with a lot of people.
Right.
And that's something I haven't seen much information about. I mean, I follow people. I know I have some friends who do jiu-jitsu, and for the most part, they seem to just be living their lives and doing jiu-jitsu. I contacted a local gym that I wanted to attend, and they're not taking new students. They have special protocols in place. I don't know what they all are, but I was immediately barred. So, like, that's where I wonder, is it responsible, you know, to do something like that close and physical?
Yeah. Well, I've wondered about that in terms of just closing gyms in general. Like, I get the idea behind it. It's a bunch of people sweating and breathing heavy around each other. But again, the consequence of that is people are likely
poor
not
health.
Exercising now. And, you know, one of the ways to fight this virus is to have a good immune system. And I don't think people are as healthy as they could be if they're being told just to stay inside all the time. People are drinking more. They're not, you know, exercising. They're not getting vitamin D. Like, so I don't know what the solution is. I don't think anyone really does, and I don't trust anyone that claims to.
I mean, fortunately for me, I had started taking a bunch of supplements before the pandemic hit. I'd started experimenting because I have like deficiencies and various health issues that kind of come and go, and Vitamin D in particular, it turns out, is very important for resistance to the COVID symptoms, and most people are deficient in vitamin D. I have a vitamin D deficiency. So I started supplementing with that and some other stuff, and I feel like without the supplements I started taking just before the pandemic, my health would be like at an absolute rock bottom. It's still not great right now. I'm not exercising. I'm whatever vice I have, I'm doing too much of it almost across the board. And that's the kind of stuff that has an impact, and it also feeds back into the infrastructure system because, people who develop unhealthy habits like that are also the people who end up drawing on the public welfare system, and the end up taking up resources, dying early, not contributing enough to society. There's just a lot to consider. I remember when the pandemic hit and the lockdown started, I immediately started worrying about World War III, and I feel like it was one of those times where there are many steps in the logic between like, oh, we got to stay indoors for a couple of weeks to this might trigger the end of civilization forever. And I think that as time goes on, that risk has increased. I'm actually starting to see articles about how we're kind of sort of teetering on the brink of a world war.
Well, it's fine. I mean, Biden's going to be president, so don't worry about it.
But, I get how that's hard to imagine, but it is.
It's not hard to imagine.
I think for a lot of people it is. I think there's a lot of people who genuinely they just stay indoors, be bored for a while, and then we'll all survive and it'll be fine. People haven't thought much about how wars start. And I mean, if there's anything that leads to war, it's something like an unstable economy is like the number one cause of disastrous large-scale armed conflict. It's just desperation. It's economic desperation. And the global geopolitical structure, all of it, it's taken some hits. There's some shockwaves and shit's not doing that well. Riots are now standard. That's just normal.
Here in Portland, yeah.
I remember, and all over the world, really. I remember when this started, I remember hearing about a riot in upstate New York in like March or something, and I was like, oh, this is a clue that the social fabric is starting to waver a little bit. This one little riot in like, I don't even remember where it was. It might have been upstate New York City, but I took note of it. And then within like a month, just the whole country and other countries were just in open rebellion, And granted that was spurred mostly by the George Floyd incident, but it's definitely connected. If you don't have a bunch of unemployed young people who can't pay their rent because they're not even getting their unemployment insurance that they pay taxes for, and they can't go to work, and they can't socialize, it doesn't take much to spark that fire.
Yeah, and then you find something that makes them that feels like meaningful. It feels like they're a part of history and all that. Like, I was thinking about that. Like, people who are out there, trying to tear down the courthouse in Portland or whatever, like, it probably feels really good. It probably feels like they are, like, doing something really good and meaningful. And it probably feels a lot better than, just sitting on your ass at home playing Xbox. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, this isn't even counting, like, I remember there was an early article I saw that basically broke down, I think it was a UN article or something, that was like, no matter how this goes, at the very least, it will increase deaths by starvation in the range of tens of thousands per month minimum within a few months. That was like just the beginning. So they were saying, even if this goes exceptionally well, by the time it's over, hundreds of thousands of people minimum will have starved to death as a result of the pandemic, not even just died from the disease, because of aid programs being disrupted and infrastructure being disrupted in places where they barely have infrastructure.
Right.
And that's bad enough. But then, I mean, the way that this can all kind of, the way the domino effect and the various cascading failures can interact and reverberate between systems, and because I mean the overall infrastructure system, the super system of subsystems of infrastructure throughout the world, they run primarily on momentum and faith. Those are the two key components. And once you lose either of those, it's really hard to get back. Like a nuclear power plant is a good microcosm, is a good sort of an analog to the overall system. you can't shut down a nuclear power plant, or if you can, I mean, I'm pretty sure it would take years, but we saw like with the Fukushima disaster in Japan, something went wrong, something ruptured, and it's still leaking radioactive water. What, like 8 years later or something? I don't even know.
Wasn't like even like you can't go to Chernobyl or whatever?
Yeah, it's probably going to be centuries before it's safe.
That's so wild to me.
Yeah,
like you can't just like clean it up and all right, it's fine now.
Yeah, and then when you think about like a plant, the plants, they take years to build and they're extremely complicated to operate. And if something goes wrong in a critical way, like you can't really just shut it down. And then if you do, turning it back on isn't just like flipping a switch. Mm-hmm. So that's where momentum comes into play. And then faith is important, obviously, because things like law enforcement or the electorate system, those are two things that you need some amount of faith in for people to basically do the minimum required to have a society, like vote for their representatives and not commit mass crimes. Mm-hmm. And both of those systems are struggling, you could say, at this point.
Wah, wah.
Yeah.
How depressing.
Yes, it's quite a bummer.
So how's Star Trek going?
Oh, Star Trek is good. I watched Star Trek the Motion Picture recently. I had seen it once before.
We're going to talk about media from 30 years ago now.
Yeah. It's longer than that. 40
Oh, the original
years.
Star Trek.
Yeah, the original Star Trek movie. Yeah, I think it was 79. I saw it once years ago, and I was super high. And I thought it was really boring and cool, but boring, kind of like 2001, where I was like, I see, interesting, but I'm falling asleep, But then I went back and watched it again, and now it's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's not super boring at all. Yeah, it's very interesting. You saw some of it when you fell asleep. Before it got cool. You missed a lot of the cool stuff.
I'll have to watch it.
Yeah. I've been nerding out a little bit. I recently wrote a sort of a first draft of a novel that I was telling you about, and it's sci-fi. I don't want to say much more than that. But that's what got me interested in Star Trek again. I'm kind of a nerd anyway for Star Trek, but yeah, I got back into it. Tried to watch the original series. I try every few years, and it's hard, It's very dated, I guess, and just difficult to watch. It's a struggle.
Well, even like the new Star Trek Discovery, like I think visually it's so cool, but like the story did not grab me at all. Yeah,
it was definitely cool visually. Some of the story could have been interesting, but I barely remember the story really. I remember that the head chick was like a Vulcan. Yeah, she was either
Vulcan.
Yeah, I think maybe she was human raised Vulcan. They always do that. Every time there's like a main character that's from another alien species, they're like half human or something. Like Worf is, I think, half human.
Oh, he is?
Yeah. Spock is some amount human.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So they're like relatable.
Right. Yeah. Like you can see them struggling with human foibles, in the framework of whatever their weird alien shit is. But yeah, the Voyager's that was, or not
Discovery.
Discovery. Yeah. It was man, Voyager. I've tried to watch that one again many times, but I hate to say it, but Captain Janeway, her voice just fucking bugs the shit out of me.
Oh,
She
really?
sounds like this fucking piercing munchkin voice. So annoying.
I never got into Voyager.
Yeah, I was wondering if like only somebody crazy like me would do this and not have time. Just like edit the whole series, edit her out, put somebody else in her place. Choose like deep fakes or something to replace her with Picard. That would be great. I could totally get into it then.
Oh man, so I didn't tell you. Okay, so this is going to be a spoiler, guys, about the show Transparent. So if anyone's interested in watching that, I'm about to totally spoil it. I got into the show Transparent, as you know. You saw me watching it.
Yes, I can vouch.
Yes. Really liked it. It's totally my type of show, which is just like a bunch of interesting, kind of shitty characters that are believable. Like, that's just my jam. Same producer as 6 Feet Under, which is like my all-time favorite show. Anyways, it's about a family, and the parent is this trans woman, comes out when she's like 68 or something like that, and she's played by, forget his name,
Jeffrey Tambor.
Yeah, you got it. So the dad in Arrested Development. Anyways, I got to the last season. There's 5 seasons, and the last season was just last year, so the season just ended. And it starts out with them like singing. And I'm like, this is weird. And it was like this musical. And I didn't really like it. I kind of respect it because I was like, okay, they're doing something different. They're taking a risk. But I kept on waiting, like, okay, are they going to like, is the musical going to be over and then they're going to go back to the show? And what I didn't realize is the entire 5th season is one long hour-and-a-half musical. And that's it. Yeah.
Jesus.
And I thought terrible. It was going to end because the cis mother of the show was wanting to be a playwright. So I was like, oh, I see what's going on. This is actually her play that they're showing. And then they're kind of like weaving in the fact that she's making, it's kind of this meta thing. No. The whole thing was a musical. And they killed off Maura, the trans mother, like right away. Like,
really?
It starts out, she's like, oh, Maura's dead, which is like, whoa. And then they go through this hour-and-a-half musical. And again, it was like, it was fine for what it was. I just wasn't ready to sit down and watch a musical, you know? Right. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. So I watched it, and it was a little disappointing because I thought I was going to watch like 10 episodes of a show, and instead I watched an hour-and-a-half musical. Anyways, I went on online to like look it up because I always kind of like reading about like reviews or like Reddit subreddits about shows that I like just to see what other people think and how they talk about it and interpret it. And what I found out was, what's the actor's name?
Jeffrey Tambor.
Jeffrey Tambor got Me Too'd. And so they killed him off because they fired him.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't look too deeply into it, but it sounds like an iffy one, you know? Like it was like 2 of the characters accused him of, I don't know, just groping or something like that.
Oh, from the show.
Yeah, from the show.
Wow.
So there's a trans woman on the show, and then another woman who I guess was like his former assistant. And, and then there was some interview that he did where he completely denied it. He was just like, I'm not that guy. That's not what happened. But he also kept like talking about how it was an unusually close cast. Like people were really close and really intimate. And he talked about how, it was just the most amazing, cast he's ever been a part of. And he's so thankful for the role and blah, blah, blah. But he was just like, let me be clear. Like, if I did something, I apologize, but it was never my intention and yada, yada. And it sounds like the ex-assistant was possibly a disgruntled assistant, and he might have been a bit of an asshole at times. I don't know. It could have been could have been people trying to be vindictive. Could have been him being a creep. I'm not really sure. But it isn't like a Cosby thing where it's like, okay,
yeah, right.
30 women came out and said this. It has the same story. Like clearly there's something going on. But and then on top of that, like the show is very it's kind of a woke show. It's a lot about these sort of identity issues and stuff like that. And the director, is one of those #BelieveAllWomen type people. And so I don't, if it wasn't, even if it was iffy or if it was totally made up, I don't think she was like, she kind of painted herself in a corner where like she didn't really have a choice but to be like, all right, I got to can this guy because there's accusations. Yeah. So I was like, damn.
Shit.
Yeah.
So then they're like, a musical.
Yeah, they killed her off, and then they had, because in the play that the cis mom is doing, so she's doing a play about her family, and it's a musical, and the whole episode's a musical, but she cast these actors as her kids, and then she casted someone as her ex-husband or wife or whatever. And then so this other trans character all of a sudden was like a fill-in for Jeffrey's character throughout the series. God. And it was funny that it didn't occur to me that like he must have gotten fired, because it was just like literally the episode starts out where her roommate just walks into a room and her expression is just like and then she calls them and it's like, Maura's dead. And so it's like, looking back, it should have been obvious, like, oh, something happened with the actor or something. Yeah.
Or it's just clunky writing,
Yeah, but then this actor isn't in the whole final hour-and-a-half series when he was the main character.
Yeah, that's a good point. That would be kind of weird.
Yeah, sorry about going back between he and she. I don't mean to misgender a character.
Well, no, I was thinking about this because, like,
but
the actor, as far as I know, he's just a cis male.
Yeah, he's a cis man.
But he's playing a transgender woman.
Yes.
So depending on whether you're talking about the actor or the character, it gets confusing.
Yeah.
So. Anyway,
It was a great show, though. I recommend it to all the people I just spoiled it for.
I wanted to like that show so much. There were elements of it I liked. I really liked the opening credits.
Yeah, the
and
credits
the music.
were great.
Yeah, and there were segments of the show that I really liked, but ultimately I found it incredibly grating and awkward, and I couldn't bear the show. It was so hard to watch. It was just an hour-long cringe every time.
They're 20 minutes episodes.
It felt like an hour-long cringe.
So this is something I will never say about anything. They needed to be longer episodes because my biggest criticism is they were constantly leaving out scenes that I were like, wait a minute, I wanted to see that. Like there were so many things like again, spoiler, there was a scene where one of the character meets a son that he never knew he had, an adult son, or maybe 17 or something. And then later he goes and he sits with his son with his immediate family, and everyone's like, who's this? And he's like, oh, give me a minute, I need to eat first. And then the episode ends. And then the following episode, this kid is just a part of the family. They're like, oh, hey, Colton. And I'm like, whoa. I want to see the scene where he tells his family, like, this is my son. Like, I want to see their expressions. I want to be like, oh my God. Like, and there were so many parts like that. I was like, why did you skip that? Like, yeah. And I think it's just because they were 20-minute episodes and they should have been like 45.
That makes sense. And it also fits with, you remember what I was saying, my biggest criticism of the show was the editing. I felt like it was just really slapdash, hacky amateur editing. But now I'm thinking maybe it's just because they had like longer episodes to begin with and they just had to chop shit out. So it ended up just weird cobbled together. It looked like bad editing, but it was probably really just that they were forced to cut out most of the story.
Yeah, that's what I think too, because that happens so many times where I was just like, why would you, what are you doing? Like, we're just supposed to accept that everyone knows this now and we just missed this scene that could have been really rich and interesting.
Yeah, it's weird.
Anyways, I still really liked it though. I binge watched it. I thought it was good. Also watched Fleabag. That was a great show.
I don't remember that one. I remember the name.
Yeah, I don't think you were paying attention when I was watching it. That made me sad. It was only 2 seasons, and then it's like definitely over.
Yeah, I've had a couple of my favorite shows are short like that. Like The Nick, I think is just a phenomenal show, and it was 2 seasons. That was it. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, I guess with Fleabag, the creator it was a play. And I guess it was successful, and they're like, do you want to do a show? And so she did a show, and then it was just supposed to be the 1 season because that was the play, basically. And then after, it was so successful, people were like, do a 2nd season. And she was like, because the creator's also the main actress, and she was just like, no, that's the story. But then she kind of, I guess she thought about it a bit more, and she thought about different ways, like the characters could evolve and have different scenarios. But yeah, the 2nd season they definitely finished it.
Yeah, Watchmen is another one. Watchmen was 1 season.
Yeah, that's stupid because there's more material for that. It's a comic, right? Mm-hmm. So that didn't really need to end.
Yeah, from what I hear, the director just didn't want to do more. He's just like, I'm done with this. I'm going to move on to other projects, which is crazy because it's like the best. It's one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, people love it.
Yeah, I was just shocked at how good it was and interesting and different. And then they're just like, yeah, we're done. That's all. I mean, on the one hand, I got to give him points for style. For like, well, going out on a high note is nice. Like I respect 1 fucking season of groundbreaking television, and they're like, that's it.
Mic drop.
Yeah, it's fucked up for us fans. I want to go back and watch it again, but I'm just gonna be frustrated the whole time knowing it's like so close to over. Yeah. It's like, oh, just give me more. But yeah, it's done.
It's done.
I do want to go. I do want to check out like what else are the producers and director doing, and whoever wrote the show, because I don't know if it was directly. I know a lot of it was from the comic, but I don't know how much of it was from the comic, or if they also had a significant amount of original writing. If so, I'd like to check out what else those writers are doing, because just so much of the show was different in a good way that I want to just try to like follow around the crew who made it.
Does it make you want to read the comic?
A little.
You're not really a comic book reader.
No, I've read a few. As a kid, I read The Crow, the graphic novel. I was a huge fan of that. But then beyond that, there's only a couple that I've read as an adult, and for the most part, they don't capture my attention enough. But I'm a little curious to go back and read the comic, but probably not curious enough.
I still got to finish Walking Dead.
Yeah, me too. Is it still on? Are they still?
Oh, I don't know about the series, but I meant the comic.
Oh, the comic. Do they still? Is that done?
Oh yeah, the comic's done.
Yeah.
And I was kind of just like letting it go because the Negan part just drags on, but someone told me that they ended it quite well, and so now I'm curious to just kind of trudge through the Negan section.
Yeah, we should get back to the show too.
Yeah, should get back to it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm out of things to say. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. That's a wrap. Thanks everyone for listening, and go to standardpodcast.com and send us your listener questions.
All right.
Which we'll eventually get around to answering.
Mm-hmm. Bye, guys.
Peace.